Thank you, everyone. Great work. I wanted to open by asking about another sort of common thread, which I thought of as optimization, but with a twist, in a sense. Many of you did an incredible job of either augmenting or refining existing systems, but doing it in your own unique way. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what surprised you the most in that process, starting from the beginning, perhaps. If there was, in the creation or the process itself of making it, if something happened along the way that really surprised you and changed how you thought about either the efficiency or the effectiveness or the optimization or the elegance of the system turned out differently than you thought.
Yeah, I can respond to that. So a lot of, when I started, I think we think of some of the solutions to just be like, why don't you just push a button for this, or just automatically, why doesn't this appear? And I think there's this balance between offering relevant information, but also still allowing for the ability to kind of make that decision and not it all be put on the computer or the system. So I think there is that constant balance for me going back and forth between just how much am I surfacing in and what's the kind of constraint on that information.
I'd say an earlier phase of my project was creating what I called a data collective, and the idea was that I would access passively generated data, so the stuff that we like on Facebook and watch on YouTube without like opting in to share it, just like living our daily online lives. And when I interviewed Russ Mashmeyer, who is the creator of the Facebook Graph Search, he told me that even with 1.5 billion users, Facebook can't just use the data that we and our friends create. It actually has to leverage it with communal public data as well. So I realized pretty quickly, thanks to that conversation, that even with a huge resource like Facebook's user base, you would have to find a better way for people to share, or not a better way, you would have to find a way for people to really share information and choose to do so.
Well, sorry. So when I first started, I was mostly focused on the physical form, so because coming from the industrial design background. But after that, meanwhile, through the process, I realized there was a lot of open data and resource about the city where I can use those information by providing a smart object, not just a physical object. And that's kind of when I started changing the direction, thinking the system, the whole support system behind my project.
And in your case, the data sources are live and open to the public, but most people don't know about them.
Yeah.
In my app, I chose to focus on these shapes as a way to abstract our thinking of list making and productivity. There's such an urge to do more. And when I first started, I thought efficiency was the key, like do as much as possible and try to do more. But I really realized it was about managing the process and trying to take a step back and having clarity for yourself. And so even though I chose to go the abstract route with shapes, really what I was going for is the idea that if you can sort out the mental model of what's in your mind, you can actually look at what you have and do it better rather than do more.
So when I start doing my thesis project about flowers, it's interesting to find that everyone almost buys flowers every day, either for themselves or for others, but actually not a lot of people really pay attention to what are they buying, what are these flowers come from. So when I just started doing my project, I was mainly focused on a customer experience part, was thinking about how can I make the experience buying flowers, choosing flowers more like interesting, amazing. But after my research, I found there's more like a part, like bigger part that really surprised me is about how the industry work, especially during my project. You guys probably see on the news that on this Valentine's Day, a lot of big players really failed to provide like really good products, and that was kind of motivate me to change that direction to focus on a more like sustainable and also like slow design. We know that there's low food for the food industry, but flowers is not like an essential product in life. So there's not awareness about the waste and then also the unchanged situation that lasts probably like from 1992. So that's why I changed my direction to focus on a bigger ecosystem, like really want to inspire some change in the flower industry.
Do any of you perhaps have an example of a wrong direction that you took in the process of making this that you'd like to share? Either an earlier prototype or something that you thought would work and turned out that the better choice was to, even though you had done all the work, to just turn in a different direction?
I can say that I actually prototyped a flower cart in a Valentine's Day. That was snowy days, and then I took my cart to Union Square, and I once tested out how people buy flowers on Valentine's Day, how they make their own bouquets on Valentine's Day. But it turns out that people just pass by, and then no one that really care, and I asked the wrong person because she's single, and asked her, "Do you want to buy a flower for yourself?" And like, no, I want to go home. So that's kind of interesting observation about like what you really expect, but it turns out very different in the real world that how people will react to that. So I won't say it's a fail, but it's like a very interesting experience for myself.
When I approached the problem, I found it very quickly to be, there's a lot of moving pieces, and I think having to scope down, I wanted to prototype the entire experience, but I ended up just scoping down more and more as I realized that kind of how complex and how big it could get if I were to try and create the entire full driving experience.
So you started at actually trying to redesign the entire car interior.
Yes. Did not go very far. But, and I think I had talked to some other professionals working on this problem, and their advice to me as well was like, you just need to like focus on one thing with this, because there are so many different ways of approaching it, but it's like the kind of this little steps that we can take to change will be more impactful than trying to completely change the entire system from one go. So, yeah.
In Bit by Bit, one key element is always having everything visible at once. And I compromised that a lot during the process of making it when I kept trying to nest more shapes inside shapes, and you couldn't see everything about your project. And so I really had to resist, and kind of hold back and try to, and I was advised also to kind of help people see everything just in one layer instead of all these little pockets. So.
Well, like I said earlier, at first I really focused on physical product itself. So my first very prototype was actually a handlebar that I was trying to put a signal light, turning signal light by pressing the button. And I thought it was really cool at the time and thinking it was the best design ever, and then realized that a lot of people have been doing that. And I was like, oh. And then so a lot of advice or feedback I got from my classmates or other professors was look deeper at the problem and finding what's the main reason and what's the majority of problem that causing the accidents. And that's when I actually started learning more about the design problem space. Yeah.
Would you like me to go?
Sure, Sam. Why not?
So I'll keep it short. My first concept was what I called ways for physical locations, and the idea was that you could have like a traffic predictor of a store or a bar or a restaurant. And when I went and interviewed shop owners or bar owners or restaurant owners, unanimously they didn't want that because, and I should have seen this coming, but they all like lines out the door, and they wouldn't want something that would get a customer to come back at a later time or date and have better customer experience. So that was a hard sell for me, and I moved on immediately.
So along the same lines, do any of you have advice for other designers having gone through this whole thesis experience, and some of whom are in this room, your colleagues who have one more year left at SVA, and other prospective students in the live stream audience?
I can say the obvious. Whatever you make, put it in front of people as soon as possible. Because if you don't, you will find that you will do a lot of work and then have to go back on that work when you do show it to somebody that actually uses it. So I think just always putting your work in front of people and getting people to interact with it is really important.
Keep track of your hunches, because they'll change over time. And as you iterate, you'll want to remember what you last predicted. And so it's great to keep measuring that and know where you're at now. So.
I have the same thought with Snaha. It's like always I will keep all the documents, like all my sketches, everything since my first idea. And then because you will find out that in the end, some of the idea you develop before actually become very valuable to integrate it into your final version, because you have a flow of your mind, but sometimes you get lost. But you will find those sketches are very valuable. And also, the most important thing is to trust what you really care about, and trust like it's really valuable to do that.
Most useful for me is just whenever you have an idea, try to make a quick prototype and test some people. That's the best way to get feedback and knowing where you want to go for your design direction.
I would just say code and create something with code and learn how to do that, even if it's kind of a light prototype, because I learned more from the coding process than I did from the design process in mine, as you probably saw. But I got a lot of help on it, and I'm so glad I built something real. So code.
Thank you again, and congratulations.